Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Vishnuvad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Status Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki Shri Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Gopremanande. All glories to the Desama devotees, all glories to the Desama devotees, all glories to the Desama devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. In Instagram land, are you okay there? Volume is okay? All right. Okay. So, we're reading today Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22, the marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, texts 29 to 30. Barhishmati Nama Pure Sarva Sampat Samanvita Nyapatan Yatra Romani Yogyasyangam Vidunvata. Do you also have verse 30 on the sheets? Just 29. Only 29. All right, so let's just do 29 and I'll read 30 in due course. Barhishmati nama pure sarva sampat samanvita nyapatanyatra romane yagyasyangam vidunvata. Barhishmati nama pure sarva sampat samanvita nyapatanyatra romane yagyasyangam vidunvata. Barhishmati nama pure Sarva Sampat Samanvita Nyapatanyatra Romane Yagyasyangam Vidunvata. Matajis. Sarvasambhat Sambanvita Vatanyatra Yormane Syangan Vidonvata. Samphat Samanvita Naparanyatra Ramane Yagyasyangan Vidonvata. Barhishmati Barhishmati Nama named Puri city Sarvasampat all kinds of wealth, Samanvita, full of, Nyapatan, fell down, Yatra, where, Romani, the hairs, Yagyasya, of Lord Boar, Angan, his body, Vidunvata, shaking. Okay, let me read verse 30 also. Kushakashas ta'evasan shashvadarita varchasa rishayo yai parabhavya yagya gnan yagyam ijire. Translation of both verses. The city of Barhishmati, rich in all kinds of wealth, was so called because Lord Vishnu's hair dropped there from his body when he manifested himself as Lord Boar. As he shook his body, this very hair fell and turned into blades of evergreen kusha grass and kasha, another kind of grass used for mats, by means of which the sages worshipped Lord Vishnu after defeating the demons who had interfered with the performance of their sacrifices. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Any place directly connected with the Supreme Lord is called Pitastana. Barhishmati, the capital of Swayambhuva Manu, was exalted not because the city was very rich in wealth and opulence, but because the hairs of Lord Varaha fell at this very spot. These hairs of the Lord later grew as green grass, and the sages used to worship the Lord with that grass after the time when the Lord killed the demon Hiranyaksha. Yagya means Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, karma is described as yagyartha. Yagyartha karma means work done only for the satisfaction of Vishnu. If something is done for sense gratification or any other purpose, it will be binding upon the worker. If one wants to be freed from the reaction of his work, he must perform everything for the satisfaction of Vishnu or yajna. In the capital of Swayambhuva Manu, Barhishmati, these particular functions were being performed by the great sages and saintly persons. Barhishmati nama puri sarvasam sampat samanvita nyapata nyatra romani yagyas yangan vidunvata kushakashas ta evasan shashvadarita varchasa rishayo yaipara bhavya yagyagnan yagyam ijare. The city of Barhishmati, rich in all kinds of wealth, was so called because Lord Vishnu's hair dropped there from his body when he manifested himself as Lord Boar. As he shook his body, this very hair fell and turned into blades of evergreen kusha grass and kasha, another kind of grass used for mats, by means of which the sages worshipped Lord Vishnu after defeating the demons who had interfered with the performance of their sacrifices. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyas Jakripas Sindhubhya Evacha Padidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Yes, so a description of Barhishmati, the residence, the capital of Swayambhuva Manu, who is the Manvantara avatar, the first one, at least in this day of Brahma. So Barhishmati is the name of the city, and it is known as such because, well, Barhis or Barhish means grass. Barhish means grass, and particularly grass used in religious performances, and particularly kusha, but it can also include kasha and some other, however many other forms of such sort of very auspicious grass. And, well, as we read, that Lord Varaha, he shook his body. Sounds like when he came back out from the causal ocean at the bottom of the universe. Otherwise, normally animals, they shake their bodies very vigorously when they've come out of water. So anyway, but at some point during his pastimes, then he shook his body, and some hairs, a number of hairs, Romani, plural, hairs, not just one hair, but a number of hairs fell as he shook his body and landed just on that ground there. and then grew. Somehow they took root and they grew as kusha grass. And kusha grass, of course, is very well known as the most auspicious type of grass. And therefore it is used in different ways, actually, in sacrificial performances. But particularly, well, these sages and saintly devotees and people who used the grass, they were using it particularly for mats to sit on, but also sometimes in the actual sacrifice procedure itself. But otherwise they'd sit on it, kusha grass mat, or kasha grass. They would, so they would use that also for mats, for use in sacrificial performances, not just any mat and not just any grass, if one is going to use a grass mat, but kusha or kasha can be used also. And there are others that can be used, but those hairs of the Lord, they grew into kusha and kasha particularly. And so they were used in that way. And so they're used in the process of worship. Means it's all very sacred. It's all very sacred and very special. Even though it's come from hair, the hair of the Lord is auspicious. Maybe you've had the experience sometime of receiving some nice, like a nice plate of prasadam or a nice serving of some sabji, and as you go into it, and you've had a couple of mouthfuls or so, what do you find but a hair? Oh, this is inauspicious. It's really inauspicious, actually. And therefore, our cooks, in the past, going back quite some time, the cooks did not wear these sort of hair nets or hair thingies, that elasticated things to keep the hair there. But for that purpose it is done, actually, because as the hair fell from the body of Lord Varaha, it might fall from your head too. But there's a big difference in the nature of and the auspiciousness of Lord Varaha's hair and our hair. So these things happen sometimes, and surely some of us at least have had such an experience. And usually the practice is that if some hair has entered a food preparation, then the food preparation should not be eaten by humans, at least. Perhaps fed to animals or placed at the roots of trees, something like that, but not fit for human consumption. It's too deeply contaminated. Just like certain things are permanently contaminated. You can try and wash them and with soap and so on as much as you like, but at the end of your washing program, that thing will still be contaminated. So here is one of those things. It's permanently contaminated. Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. As we find sometimes stated in Prabhupada's books, that some bottle which has been used for keeping wine, it should just be discarded. Don't try to wash it and then use it as one might do otherwise with some other bottle, but just discard it, because the presence of that wine means it's permanently contaminated and cannot be purified. And that's it. That's the end of that bottle. So here falls into that category. Loose hair which falls here and there. And therefore in Vaishnava culture, traditionally men have short hair or no hair, but except for a Sikha, and women have hair, but it's tied back. It's tied back, down the back, out of the way, not used as some sort of sort of decorative feature. Look at my hairstyle, sort of thing. Just keep it out of the way, because after all, as we were told when we first joined the temple in very graphic terms, that it is said that Prabhupada said that here is petrified stool. Petrified stool. It's solidified. Yeah. Haribol. So, some stool in your food. Hare Krishna. No, thank you. Right, but the hair of the Lord is not like that, because anything to do with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is auspicious, is extremely auspicious, is worshipable. It's worshipable. And therefore, these sages and saintly persons who, of course, knew what they were doing and knew what was right and wrong and knew the difference between clean and unclean. It's one feature of Kali Yuga society. So many people have so little idea of the difference between clean and unclean. Yeah. And there's so much dealing, meaning handling and utilization of things which are unclean, but they're just used. But the hair of the Lord, which otherwise, if it was anybody else's pretty much, certainly if it was any ordinary person's, would be just immediately disposed of or just avoided, it's worshipable. And it's used in the most sacred performances to add to the sacredness, to increase the sacredness. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all auspicious. And even there's very interesting little section in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the section, the second part, the eastern part, is it eastern? Anyway, the second part, where things in Nectar of Devotion, from chapter 20 onwards, for some number of chapters, where the qualities of Krishna are described. So there are all these different qualities of Krishna. And at one point, Srila Rupa Goswami, he goes into a discussion about how when Krishna does something which would normally in just a normal material world situation, when Krishna does something that would be considered wrong, inauspicious, we don't do that, it's bad, that sort of thing. A fault, a real fault. But when the Lord does it, it becomes glorious, auspicious and wonderful. And we want that. Whereas otherwise, something inauspicious and bad like that, we don't want that. We avoid that. So, just a few examples. There are, how many? I think there's 18 examples given based on a couple of verses from some Vaishnav Tantra or some literature of that sort. Like, for example, stealing. Of course, we all know very well that Krishna stole the butter and he stole the clothes of the gopis. The clothes of the gopis, from what we know, it was just one time, but stealing the butter was an everyday affair. Mother Yashoda, being aware that Krishna was going out and stealing the butter, and sometimes the people who he stole from became disturbed, she tried to deal with that by producing, it's a bit of a long story, but she selected from Nanda Maharaja's herd of around 900,000 cows or so, several that were the best, gave the best milk. And she took them out and kept them at by the house in the village. And then she would go every day. She noted certain places where the best grass grew. And she would go every day and personally cut the grass and bring it back, so this group of the best cows would eat it, because the milk of a cow is dependent on the quality of what they eat. So she got the best. So therefore the best milk was produced. From the best milk, she made the best yogurt. And from that best yogurt, she made the best butter. Really wonderful butter. And then she just handed over to Krishna. Here, eat it to your heart's content. Because she wanted to stop him from going out and stealing, because stealing is wrong. Stealing is bad. It's like a manifestation of contaminated character if one has an inclination to steal. So, Krishna was very happy to receive this better than first-class butter. And he would start eating a little bit. Mother Yashoda would go away, come back in 5 minutes, and Krishna would have gone. And he would be in some other nearby house stealing the butter. So poor Mother Yashoda, she developed a complex about her butter and about her apparent failings as a mother. So anyway, stealing, of course, stealing is criminal. And people go to prison every day for stealing different things. But Krishna, when Krishna stole the butter, it was glorious. And sometimes when the lady of the house would catch Krishna stealing the butter and take him back to Mother Yashoda, and she's feeling a little, transcendentally upset that he's stealing the butter. So she would take him to Mother Yashoda and tell her, I want to see you in front of me. Chastise him and correct him. Don't just let it go. And so Mother Yashoda would start chastising Krishna, and Krishna would become very sorry. and put his head down and be like he's very embarrassed, feeling bad. And some tears would come. I'm being chastised by my mother. And that lady who had brought Krishna, when she saw Krishna's mood, changed from the stealing mood into this very regretful and a little distressed mood. Her heart was touched. And then Mother Yashoda is wagging her finger and chastising. And the lady, after just a few moments of this, a minute or so perhaps, the lady would say, "Don't speak to him like that. Why are you chastising him? Don't do that." And Mother Yashoda would say, "But you told me you want to see me do it in front of you." And the lady would say, no, I never said that. Krishna is a good boy. He's a nice boy. And Mother Yashoda would then say, "Well, okay, all right then, if that's what you want. But I'll make sure I'll lock the door so he doesn't come and steal butter from you again." And the lady would say, no, don't do that. Just let him come. It's all right. I'm always happy to see him. So, yeah, stealing. This is stealing. But it's auspicious. As Prabhupada would say, when Krishna was good, he was good. And when Krishna was bad, he was good. Krishna's all auspicious. Yeah. Of course, we know, and it's discussed particularly by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that the reason why Krishna was stealing the butter, and he didn't just go and ask for some or try to purchase some, like there's a famous story, it's in the Bhagavatam, of one lady coming from another village to sell fruit. And Krishna went to purchase some or to trade. He had seen how Mother Yashoda would take some grains from their grain store and go and trade it with some visiting sort of business person, seller, for different types of things, foodstuffs and household items. So Krishna came to do that. But as he came out, he's just a little boy, and the grains were falling from between his fingers, and he got out there, had hardly any left, but the lady thought, such a nice boy, she just gave him whatever he wanted. So my point there is that Krishna could have tried to trade something for some butter, because that was what that was what happened with a lot of the butter. It was traded to get other things. That was how the Brijbasis lived. So, but first of all, the cows were always thinking, we want Krishna to get our milk and everything that's made from our milk. So all their love went into their milk. Then the ladies milked the cows. The men didn't milk the cows, the ladies did. And they'd milk the cows, and then some of it they'd keep as milk, and they would transform into different dairy products. But while they're doing all this, they would be thinking how they want Krishna to have those different things, like the butter. But the husbands were not happy about just giving the butter away, because that was their means of livelihood. But the ladies wanted Krishna to have it. Krishna wanted to have it because all the love of the ladies and the cows was in it. So what to do? He had to steal it. So actually it's an exchange of love, and it's auspicious. It's very auspicious. So in that section there of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, quoting this couple of verses, listing out these different, what are generally inauspicious activities, he gives examples for each one of how Krishna does the same things, but they're very auspicious. Like one inauspicious thing is to become dependent on other people. So, dependent on their whims. And, if their whims go wrong, then your life goes wrong because you're dependent on them. So, and therefore Brahmins, for example, Brahmins would always live independently and be independently thoughtful. They would never take employment and just become a salaried worker, because then you're dependent. But we know, of course, there are many examples of Krishna becoming dependent on his devotees, dependent on Mother Yashoda, becoming dependent on the gopis. And when this happens, everything is enhanced. When Krishna becomes dependent on Mother Yashoda, and she orders him, don't do this, do that, it enriches the exchange of affection. It enriches the whole relationship. Yes. So dependency, which is otherwise inauspicious, becomes auspicious and glorious when the Lord does it. And there are various other things. One of them is sleep. Sleep. Sleep is generally inauspicious. As Vaishnavas, we try to reduce it as much as reasonably possible. But, of course, hopefully to avoid falling asleep in situations where one should definitely stay awake, like driving a motor car, and sitting in class and chanting japa, and so on. But still, one should not just sleep just endlessly. It's inauspicious. But Srila Rupa Goswami quotes the Bhagavatam, the one particular pastime which is there, where Krishna, having engaged in different games with his cowherd boyfriends out there in the fields and in the forests, Krishna became tired and he wanted to lie down and have a rest, a short nap. As Prabhupada would say, a snap, a short nap, a snap. So Krishna would want to take a short nap. So one of the boys, as an exchange of love, as a service, would sit down cross-legged, and Krishna would then come, lie on his back, and then rest his head on the crossed legs of the cowherd boy. So it was auspicious because it's an exchange of love in devotional service, and the relationship between Krishna and the boy would become enhanced. And some other boys someone would recite something for Krishna's pleasure as he's resting. Someone would fan him with some leaves while he's resting. So that sleeping was facilitating different forms of service. Anyway, there are a number of examples there. Another one is Okay. I've got to change. All right, just 1 minute. Aha. So, another one, inauspicious, a fault, something which is wrong, is confusion. When someone becomes just a sec. He's coming. There he is. Okay, yeah, when someone becomes confused, bewildered, then they do something they shouldn't do, just by mistake. They drop something, or whatever. They lose something. They say the wrong thing when they become confused. They can't understand what's going on in some situation which they should understand. So Srila Rupa Goswami gives the example of Krishna and Balaram when they were small, when they were quite small. They're walking a bit, but they're also crawling. So sometimes, they're down ground level, and sometimes, and they're playing around and crawling and walking sometimes, and then crawling. And they would see some adult walk past. But adults, are much well above their sort of immediate line of sight. And they would see an adult walk past, a man or a woman, and they'd think, oh, it's my father, it's our mother, oh, let's go with her. And so off they'd go, crawling or, sort of walking in kind of awkward ways, following that adult. And they would go a little, so many meters or just a little away from their house, and then they'd look up and they see, oh, it's not mother, it's not our father. And they'd become bewildered and quickly come back to the shelter of mother and father. So all these different nice examples are given of Krishna doing things which would normally be considered just wrong, foolish, you don't do that, inauspicious, and so on and so forth. But when Krishna does them, it becomes auspicious, and beyond just auspicious, it becomes glorious and wonderful, like just super transcendentally auspicious. And his hair is like that too. Of course, Prabhupada goes on to discuss that the principle of those yagyas, that those sages and saintly people, devotees, they were doing those yagyas because it's the right thing to do. An intelligent person who understands what is what in life will engage, must engage in yajna, sacrifice, in some form or other. In those days, of course, they were doing fire yajnas, and maybe they were doing other sorts of sacrificial performances and using them, like in worship of deities. They would sit on those mats made of the grass which had grown from the hair of the Lord. So, because they understood very clearly that without sacrifice, life cannot go on. And if it is sort of going on, but in due course it will deteriorate, and eventually it will come to a point of just severe deterioration. And that's what we see in society today. There's a shortage of real sacrifice. Of course, in Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice which will really work and really help positively is the Sankirtan Yajna. Other than that, all the yajnas they performed in previous yugas, they won't actually, more or less they will have actually no effect. The only beneficial thing may be that they chant certain transcendental mantras to some degree in the course of their yajna, but otherwise, like Shonaka Rishi found, who was it? Shonaka Rishi. Shonaka Rishi found when Sutta Goswami arrived on the scene there in Naimisharanya, right at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shonaka Rishi said, we have been doing this fire yajna. We're meant to do it for 1,000 years. We've already been doing it for some time. Some time has passed. But as far as we can see, well, we're doing it to create an auspicious atmosphere. So the sinful, degraded atmosphere of Kali Yuga, which had already started, will be sort of held back until later. So we're doing this, but as far as we can see, there's no result. The atmosphere, things are going down, and so we're not holding that deterioration back. And then Shonaka Rishi corrected himself and said, actually, you know, we are getting one result. We are getting a result. The result we're getting is our faces are becoming blackened by the smoke. Other than that, nothing else is happening. So can you help us what to do to offset the inauspiciousness and degradation of Kali Yuga? And of course then Sutta Goswami presented Srimad Bhagavatam. So all these things were going on there in Barhishmati because those devotees and Swayambhuva Manu and everybody understood we must engage in sacrifice. If we don't, it's not a matter of if things will go down, it's just a matter of when they'll go down, and then life will become sort of intolerable or just very unpleasant for us. Our lives will fall to pieces, and society will fall to pieces, and it's just going to be a grand mess. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada came. Let me just do a quick time check. We could take one question or comment because I have to go for a conference call. Any words of wisdom? Jai Sachinandan Prabhu, you normally have some nice comment.
And sometimes I get very sticky when I see they're not covering the hand, they're cooking, and I get on the case. And sometimes mixed feelings. And
interesting.
try to, even the congregation, they're not aware of this kind of practice of
that's
covering.
True. Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, indeed. Okay. Maharaj. Swarup Damodar Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada came. Hare Krishna. Sure. Okay. Haribol. Haribol.